drive accessibility compliance. Recent affiliations include EDUCAUSE, the Center for Analysis and Research, IT Accessibility Working Group, the Texas A&M ADA Committee, and the Go Web Steering Committee, and the Texas A&M University System Council for Academic Technologies and Innovative Education, and its Accessibility Universal Design for Learning Task Force. Cynthia is a graduate of Texas A&M with a marketing communication experience in the private sector. She's been involved in IT strategic planning at Texas A&M and the Texas A&M Health Science Center, where she's played an essential role in directing accessibility efforts for almost 5 years. Cynthia, we're so happy to have you here today. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to you to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be presenting within this series. I think it's been an exceptional series of speakers, and I've enjoyed every last one of them. So I'm glad to be a part of it. Without further ado, I guess we'll just get right to it. Can everyone see my screen? All right, I've shared my screen. All right, great. We'll be talking today about the accessibility of applications and websites, and really just building that framework to ensure that everything we do at Texas A&M University is, provides equitable access and learner success as well in the academic environment. And so when we talk about applications, we're going to be talking specifically about web applications or products that require coding, different types of software applications that you may be purchasing or you may be utilizing. So we're going to go through these topics today, and I didn't really provide objectives, so my apologies for that. But just to give you a quick preview of what we're be talking about, we'll be focusing mostly on selecting applications and creating websites today, with some background in understanding learner needs, and then a little bit about designing documents, and then a wrap up of ensuring access for everyone. So learners have preferences, and I may actually arrive at a website in a different way than you do, or I may actually choose to utilize the search function to find someone, a search box, whereas others might go through the navigation to find those things. We each have unique preferences of how we access different electronic and information resources. And when we talk about these resources, they're often referred to as EIR. And so that involves software, hardware, websites, documents, anything that has a digital component, which has an interface for users. And so along with these preferences come some of these different points, which is, often folks can choose to either disclose that they have a disability with disability resources, or they may choose not to. They may just want to go it alone and not do that. They also may register with disability resources at any time during the semester. And so they may start the semester and decide, oh, I need a little bit of help. I think perhaps I could use that assistance. Like I said, there may be multiple ways to access information, and this is more so true for those with disabilities. And user preferences, like I said, are just as unique as individuals. And so we want to make sure that we're having those conversations with folks to understand how and why they're accessing things the way they do. There are multiple modes and formats that you can utilize that are beneficial when presenting that information. And that touches a little bit on the universal design topic, like we were talking about, earlier in a previous presentation. So that factors into, and that's important as well. A big part of our responsibility, in providing electronic and information resources is doing research, helping folks to find out how best they can access information. So these are some ways that students can access EIR using assistive technologies. Screen readers can be utilized by those who are blind or have low vision. Keyboard only access, that's one of our largest groups of users at Texas A&M University, where keyboard access allows folks to go through a website or other materials using only their keyboard without having to utilize the mouse. Zoom text basically enlarges the screen for those with low vision. And then there are other types of assistive technologies like tactile graphics that allow those who are blind to get information. Obviously, too, there are transcripts and closed captions, which can be beneficial to all of us, but especially those who are deaf and hard of hearing. And if you want to know more, just ask folks. I mean, just ask them, what can I do to assist you? How can I help? But remember that some of those conversations with some of the individuals who have registered with disability resources, all of those conversations are confidential. We don't ever want to single anyone out, or call attention to the fact that they're maybe utilizing assistive technology or different other workarounds for their disabilities. And assistive technology, like I was indicating, can help everyone. A lot of these different things allow us to access things as well in a better way. So selecting applications, we just want to be aware when we are really in the beginning choosing what you're going to utilize in your classroom, what you're going to utilize for presentations, what you may use for your business efforts at Texas A&M, that we're selecting the most accessible products to meet a business need. And so to do that, we use what's called a voluntary product accessibility template, and it's often referred to as a VPAT. This is a template, and so once the template is filled out by the vendor, it's then called an Accessibility Conformance Report, or ACR. And it's often referred to, again, by both names, VPAT, or Accessibility Conformance Report, or ACR. And it's a global standard by which we all need to adhere to the accessibility criteria, the accessibility principles that are set forth by sort of the governing bodies, if you will, or the industry standards that are set forth. There's no such document for things like website design services or programming services. So in those instances, we need to be especially careful to have discussions with those service providers to ask them how they meet accessibility standards. What do you do to ensure that individuals who are blind or low vision or colorblind or hard of hearing can access your information or access your program or your website? And then we want to use the latest version 2 of the VPAT, which is WCAG 2.1 level 2A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull over my browser window, and I'll show you that this is the standard established by the Information Technology Industry Council, I believe is what it's called, ITI. And so for accessibility, they have provided these templates. And so if you go there, like if you ask a vendor for a VPAT and they go, well, I don't know what that is, you can kind of explain that it judges criteria for the way they've developed their products. And then you can give them this website and let them know that what we're interested in is the WCAG version. And they're already at VPAT version 2.4. It's been revised. You can see here February 2020. But we're looking at this WCAG version because it maps more directly to what we're looking for with Texas Administrative Code and Texas laws. So once you click on this, you can see, well, it's downloading. So let me see if I can pull that over. I'll just show you what one looks like. So it gives information about the document, how it's developed, what the vendors need to do, how, basically instructions about how to fill out the document. And then once you get down to the information part, here are best practices, a branding header or different things that you can add to the VPAT. Once you get down to the nitty gritty, here's what we're looking for this is the start, the beginning of the VPAT. Like I said, it's a template, so it's blank. And then the vendor will go in and fill out all this different information. Make sure that when someone submits it to you, they provide their company name and the name of the product and version. You'd be surprised how many folks don't do that. They may have all the information we're requesting, but we really do want to make sure that they're giving that for the particular piece of software or the application that we're wanting to utilize. So there are different web content accessibility guidelines. It shows 2.1 here, or 2.0 or 2.1. We're trying to strive at Texas A&M for 2.1, even though state law requires 2.0. And the whole reason is we need to be innovators. We need to be those folks who are trying to do the best we possibly can to provide access for everyone. There are terms which are utilized: supports, partially supports, does not support, not applicable, or not evaluated. And not applicable would be something like, if you have a website, it's not going to have any, it's not that the criteria for hardware would not apply, for example. So everything should have partially supports, or does not support, unless it really does not apply. If something is not evaluated, that could be a little bit of a red flag. We want to really make sure that the vendors are really taking care to look at all these criteria and try to meet them. So when you provide the report, it's going to ask for the conformance level for all these different criteria. And, we may not all know what they mean, but the vendors actually would know, or the developers actually would know what a lot of these things mean. Some of them are simple: establishing the language of a page for a website, making sure there's focus on different things when we click on it or hover over with the mouse, different things about captions and the like. There is even a section at the end about providing support materials. So like if the company is providing hardware, but their support materials for that hardware are inaccessible, then we want to talk to that vendor, have those discussions, and ask them if they are able to provide a more accessible version in the future. And I'm not going to go too more deeply into that. If you guys have questions about it, you can contact us, our team at IT Accessibility at tamu.edu. But what I want to really do is take a look at, let me move this back over. Take a look at the steps that are required to procure accessible information, EIR, electronic and information resources, including those applications. Like we may be using, something in a class that's a niche product, that's an open source product that we get for free, or we may be purchasing something with a P card, or purchasing something through central purchasing through Agify. All of these things are involved in, ensuring accessibility. And so all these steps do apply to all of those different types of resources. So you would want to consider multiple products to meet a particular business need. So what that means basically is, look at competitors, see what they have to offer, see how fully each meets your business need, and then factor in the accessibility discussions in the equation. You may have a company that maybe is at this point in time 85% accessible, but they have a really robust plan for the future. And so that would require some consideration. If it meets 100% of your business need, then there are steps we can take to ensure that procuring that is still keeping us into compliance and reducing risk for the university. So you can consider the multiple products, obtain the ACRs online or by contacting the vendor. So you may want to search for the product's name and VPAT after that. And a lot of times you'll find it that way. VPAT is much more common, even though it's technically considered an ACR after it's filled out. The usage of VPAT is really universal. So you may want to search for the company name, company name, product name, and VPAT after it. And a lot of times those will be posted online, thankfully. You can also request assistance from IT personnel or accessibility subject matter experts. We're happy to help. Again, we have that email address that you can, refer products to us. We can help you vet products if it's a very important launch of something you're wanting to do. we create a project and we help you go through that to look and see which products are most accessible. For example, for the learning management system, we did an extensive analysis of Canvas, Blackboard, and I think it was D2L. I'm not 100% certain, but we took an extensive look at that and helped with the accessibility considerations for those. So if achieving full compliance is not possible, you can still purchase the resource in most cases. An exception is needed and leadership approval is required for that. So some EIR already have exceptions, and the exceptions are in place because maybe it's a low risk item where not many people are using it, or it's vital to the university, but we only have 3 users of that resource. And those are already accepted. And so you would just have to fill out a very quick form disclosing that you're utilizing that application. Also, there are exceptions in place for different units. For example, the College of Education may have an exception that you could potentially use. If you contact our office, we can look and see if the use case is similar, if you're able to kind of piggyback on that exception, or if a full-blown exception request is needed. And when I say full-blown, it's really not that intensive. It's just basically you filling out some information, and then we route it through the appropriate parties automatically. And we take a look and just ensure that you have a method for ensuring access to those who might need it. And then those are approved. It just requires a chain of approval for those things. So I mentioned, and we won't click on the ACE tool right now, but I mentioned that some of those are available, and we'll take a look at that in a second. So here's just a quick exercise on looking at this information. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime in or if people just want to indicate it in the chat, but selecting accessible products. So we have product A, which meets 100% of accessibility criteria, but it only meets 85% of the business need. And the vendor has a mature accessibility program and plans to expand their business offerings in the near future. Compared to product B, which has 50% of accessibility criteria met and meets 100% of the business need. It's an industry leader, but the vendor is very reluctant to provide any information whatsoever about accessibility compliance, and not helpful in that way at all. Then product C, we have 85% of accessibility criteria met with 100% of business need. And then the vendor is agreeable to feedback to indicate, that they'll work with us if we see barriers to access, that maybe they'll, revise their products in the future. So if anyone cares to just, put it in chat or just kind of unmute and just let me know what would be the best option out of these 3, or which one is not a good option, or however you want to phrase that. I don't know if that's easy to look at, Christy, and see. I don't have my chat pulled up. So
yeah, it looks like there's a little bit of variety there. Mostly people are saying A or C, or they're saying B is not good. C seems like a smart answer, but want to say A. So mostly C, I think, is what people are choosing.
Yeah. So if it were me, I would choose C, because that vendor is very helpful and they've been very open about their progress and their plan. We don't ever want to be in a position to where we go, oh, darn it, I really wanted this resource but it only meets 50% of our business need. Well, that's not a good use of state funds, right? If something's only meeting 50% of a business need, that's probably not a good decision. That's probably not a good solution. A and C are good choices. It just depends on how much of the business need you need to meet at a particular given time. Say you're phasing in an application, you may be able to deal with product A, but for product C, in my mind, just looking at this is the best choice off the cuff, so to speak. So very good, everyone. I'm so pleased with that analysis.
And we do have a question, Cynthia.
Okay.
It is regarding D2L. Was Brightspace looked at because y'all were interested in using them, or just because you did an audit of multiple programs?
The three that were looked at were given to us by Academic Innovation and the Provost IT. We ourselves did not have a vested interest in which ones we looked at. That was more of a conversation from the Provost office, knowing that they liked these three solutions to meet the business need, and then we analyzed them. And just an FYI, when we analyzed them, they were mostly similar. They were very similar, and any one of them would have been a good choice when considering accessibility. I think each one has, benefits, multiple benefits, too many to go into, but they were very equal when it came to accessibility. And so that's a good thing, because they were equally good and acceptable in the realm where accessibility is concerned.
Yeah. I don't know, Sharina, if you want to unmute and ask a little bit more of your question, or if that.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I guess I had a twofold question. So I was just kind of curious if this happened when Canvas was being considered to make the switch from eCampus is my first question. And then my second question, you say that they're similar in regards to accessibility. And I wondered at what level you looked at. Like, did you look at the base level program? Or because I know some of these programs have accessibility tools that require extra payment. And so that's something like with Ally, I know that's an add-on that costs money. And so I was just wondering if you were just looking at the base level or if y'all took that into consideration.
Yeah, we looked at the base level, but we knew that the provost office IT was interested in purchasing Blackboard Ally as an auxiliary tool for any of the ones we went to, right? Because we were progressing as an institution with regard to accessibility, so that's great. So we knew that already. We kind of looked at the primary functionality of it. We looked at the VPAT, and so we were able to analyze those and see that they were very much alike in most cases.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
Yeah, and I don't recall any particular deficiencies at this time, but everything was very close. And like I said, we could have confidently, said you can choose any of these, which is basically almost what we did because they were so even when it came to accessibility. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
So for procurement takeaways, any product can be procured if it's analyzed for accessibility conformance and, it goes through the proper channels of either doing a quick disclosure, if it's in a category of accepted risk, or filling out our accessibility exception request form is what they're called. And then that, what used to be a PDF form is now an automated form, and it has automated routing through Laserfish, which also saves that for a particular duration. So the vendor conversations are essential when you're really trying to, determine something that's going to be used either campus-wide or college-wide or even department-wide. It's ever so important, for us to just try to get the most accessible product to meet those needs. And then those, I'm going to show you quickly when I'm going to pull the browser window over again and show you the ACE tool and the kind of information it gives. And then you can always, like I said, request information from us. So let me pull this back over again, and we're going to quickly look at the ACE tool and just show you it's a searchable tool. If anybody wants to access it, Christy, I don't know if you can put that in there, but in the chat, but it requires a login. We don't want to disclose this to the whole world, but it basically, you can look at the scope of approval. If I want to see things that are approved university-wide, if you go, oh, wow, do I have to fill out an exception? Look at the university-wide exceptions. And all of these products could be purchased without you having to fill out an exception request. Now, college-wide is a little bit different. And when we look at college and administrative unit, it may only be used by that particular college or administrative unit. So say you're in the College of Engineering and you want to use 3D Expert. you're able to without filling out another request form. However, someone from the College of, I don't know, agriculture maybe is not able to utilize that without first consulting or contacting our office. Then you also want to look at the expiration date. If you're nearing in on an expiration date, you wouldn't necessarily want to go, oh, I'm going to just go ahead and purchase this, and the exception is about to expire. It might be good to contact our office if it's nearing expiration. Then we also drill down even to departmental levels. We're trying to have resources on here that we can clearly, state that they would be good for college level use. Sometimes it's a niche product and we'll only approve that for departmental. And when I say we approve it, we recommend, our team recommends, and then it goes to basically after our approval goes to our vice president of the unit, and then it goes to the president or designee. And so you can search by EIR name here. If you want to search by name, it's in alphabetical order, or you can search in the search box. If you know the particular product name, you can put it in here, and all the information for those products will pull up. Want to be specifically clear when you look at a version, because Dragon Medical 1 5.0 may be very different from Dragon Medical 1 6.0. And so we want to make sure that we're looking clearly at the specific version. Sometimes it may indicate here that the version, is you'd have to contact our office to get the version, which is fine. Just give us a shout. It also does show, and I'm not going to click on this, but it will show the ones that have a VPAT. You can access those here. You can also see the approved exceptions. So we're being very transparent with how we look at things and how we deal with them. Any questions about that?
Yeah, Cynthia, does that include like AgriLife? You said it's system-wide and university-wide. Does that also include AgriLife?
It does not include AgriLife. That's why I was very clear, trying to be very clear, like College of Agriculture. And I know sometimes those things kind of intermingle. And so oftentimes it's difficult to kind of differentiate one from the other when funds intermingle and the like. But we can safely say that if it's for use for Texas A&M University, College of Agriculture and Biomedical Sciences, and even College of Engineering, that these would apply. All right. Any questions about procurement? And we're going to head on to the next topic.
Before we go on, is everyone able to hear? We had one person say they cannot hear the presentation. Can you do a little thumbs up reaction or something if you are able to hear? Oh, can hear. Yeah. Okay. Phyllis, I'm not sure what's happening, but everyone else can hear it, sounds like. You're welcome to log out and log back in, and maybe that'll help. That's my IT response. Turn it off and turn it back on again. That's about all I know.
That's a safe bet. I think that's a safe bet. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about creating websites. And again, we're not going to take a super deep dive, but I do want folks to know that if you're creating a departmental website or faculty website, it's important to have some of these concepts in mind, to know the general idea of what to do and what not to do when it comes to accessibility. And there's nothing more frustrating, I think, than not being able to access the information you need. And I think we've all experienced that. Perhaps it's a link that's very small or hidden or something. We've all experienced not being able to get the information we need. Perhaps the page, it was the last place you looked or something. So we want to make sure that some of these layouts and different navigation and all is very intuitive. So for general tips, we want to make sure that all site visitors are having the same experience. So whether I'm, an individual who's blind or low vision, or one who's hard of hearing, or perhaps, I just have glasses and I need to make sure I can zoom in to look at the screen to make sure that the information renders correctly. I think a lot of us are in that situation, that particular situation. And we just want to make sure that everyone gets a good experience. So when you're creating a website, you might want to start out with an accessible template. Now, I know the College of Liberal Arts and College of Engineering have templates already in use. that individuals can take and, create their websites and get a little bit of assistance in doing that. I'm not sure about across campus for other units, but you might just want to check with your communications department to see if that's an option or to see if that's something that perhaps could be developed. It's one of my recommendations to campus-wide to in the future provide some more of these templates to help make things more accessible. So you want to make your information the focus, and don't so much get carried away with this particular font or that particular font, or I'm so creative that I'm going to make everything rainbow colored. Sometimes those things are distracting to users, or different wild color combinations or the like. We just want to really make sure that for the most part, everyone who's looking at this can access the information and not be distracted and use it to the best possible way. And so we want to use accessibility best practices and universal design principles, which basically means, again, from a previous presentation, providing multiple ways of accessing information and evaluating. So standards for accessible websites. We need to understand how site visitors will access your site. Like I said, maybe they're arriving from a link from another site. Maybe they've just, already, maybe they had the link and they're just putting it in their browser and the information comes up. And then maybe when they're, going through the information, there's applications that you can get to show heat maps of what people look at, how they go through a site, those different things. And that's, again, a little too much information, but it will let you know that everybody accesses things in a different way. So make sure navigation is good, make sure it's consistent. That's a big deal. So like if you have pages on your entire site and they have a whole lot of different layouts with a whole lot of different navigation, it's very confusing to the user, to the site visitor. And again, we want to meet WCAG 2.1 level 2A compliance, and I'll show you guys that in a minute and just show you what that means. And then you can request access to our enterprise-wide scanning tool, which is Site Improve. And you can request access if you have a site you're developing, or you have a site that you want to just keep track of accessibility. It also has a quality assurance panel to where you can check for broken links, misspellings. So it's a very, very robust tool with very good information. And then you want to make sure that documents that you place into your website and link to are accessible as well. And then I've provided WebAIM as a reference for more information about websites and useful tips. And then, as I was saying earlier, make your designs pretty intuitive, like make it somehow what most users would expect when you're designing things. And then we also have the IT accessibility website, which too has a lot of good tips. So we're going to go through just again quickly some of these resources, and I'm going to bring them over once again.
Cynthia, while you're doing that, we had a question, I think, about Site Improve. That was just it. Can anyone request access, or is that just for IT personnel?
No, I think anyone can request access, and it does give you, whether you may have to talk to your department before you go straight to marketing and communications, just to see if your department wants you to have access, right? So I like to dot the I's and cross the T's and figure that out, before you go to requesting that you be added to Site Improve by marketing and communications by the primary webmaster for the university, who is the super admin of Site Improve. And if anybody needs that information, I'll be happy to provide it if you, again, email us at itaccessibility@tamu.edu, and we'll be happy to address that. I hope that's helpful. I think anybody has the capability of requesting access, but please get departmental approval first. Okay, so here are the web content accessibility guidelines, and there are a lot of them, right? Is the information perceivable? Is it operable? Is it understandable? And is it robust? And then it talks more about conformance. And all of these things are different criteria criterion for, or criteria for making websites accessible. But the great thing about it, and again, I'm not really going to go into all of it, you can click on one of these items and then it will give you examples. It'll also tell you where to go and how to fix it. You know, understand text spacing, how to meet the text spacing, understanding content, how to meet it. And so it gives you that information. A lot of this may be for many users, it may be complicated and maybe too much, which is fine. I just wanted to give you all an idea of what it is. So we're going to go over some quick things that you can do to make sure that your websites are accessible in a few minutes, you know, for the most part. Then Site Improve I referenced. Here's just the Site Improve site. Once you have information, you can sign into Site Improve, but here are a lot of different companies that are using Site Improve, and it really does a lot of great things. And so if you have time, again, look into that. WebAIM is an industry leader when it comes to accessible websites. And so they have different trainings. You can sign up for trainings. I think some of those are virtual now. You can get technical assistance. They have different, and I'm not going to be able to find it really quickly, but if you go in their search bar and say you want to search for how to provide alternative text, it'll pop up. So anything that you might want to know how to do, you can put it in there. So that's very helpful also to know. So I wanted to make sure and let you guys know about that. There's our IT accessibility website. We have things compartmentalized into creating documents, captioning videos, developing websites, procuring IT, and training opportunities in case you want to dig deeper after this webinar. Again, access here to the ACE tool. We also have a new accessibility glossary, which I'll try to send maybe to Megan and let you guys know about that link, because we're going to be populating it with a lot of great information as well. Okay, now I'm going to move that all back over again. And any questions, any more questions about websites? I know that took a lot of time, but we'll be breezing through the rest of the presentation because all the rest is, you know, supporting information.
There aren't any questions right now, Cynthia.
Okay. All right, so preventing barriers to access. We want to make sure we use alternative text or alt text for images. Ensure adequate color contrast by using a color contrast analyzer tool. And I'll show you one of those in a bit. Avoid using color alone to convey meaning. And what that basically means is like, you know, you've seen those forms that are filled out and it says information in red is required. Well, if folks are colorblind, they may not be able to differentiate the red from a gray or a black. So, you know, other things like additional identifiers or perhaps bold text or something different to add to that color designation would be good. Using meaningful link text. So you've seen links where folks go, click here or read more, and that's not acceptable because we want the users to know the destination of their clicking and what it is. Screen reader users can utilize their assistive technology in order to just go through all the links on the page. And if every link indicates click here, read more, then that's what the screen reader user will experience. Click here, read more. And they don't know where they'll be going to once they do that. Grouping text into sections or chunking information is very good. And you can use sequential headings to do that. And then utilizing list formats. Especially selecting the text and choosing that it be formatted with either you know, bullets or a numbered list, rather than adding the numbers in on your own or adding the bullets in on your own. And then we want to ensure that transcripts are utilized for audio content. And then I like everybody to really, for video content, to provide both, because we have users who you know, both transcripts and closed captioning for multimedia. We have users that, you know, may not want to sit through an entire video to find out a little bit of information. They would much rather scan a transcript rather than watching a whole movie or the like. This is helpful for a lot of different people, or they can go back and they're able to search terms and find the information they need in a better way. So we have some demos, and I hope I'm not going to run over all, but these are hopefully going to be pretty good for y'all too. Let me pull it over once again. So the color contrast analyzer that we're talking about, let me go to that one first. There's a color contrast checker where you can put in a foreground color or a background color. Now this particular one is based on web colors that you select. There are some RGB color contrast analyzers. So if you're creating a Word document and you select a custom color, it'll give you an RGB value. And there are certain color contrast analyzers that allow you to put in RGB values. And once you do, you can see that this particular color meets the threshold. It passes with the normal text size, it passes with the large text size, and it passes for a graphical object user interface. So if we like, maybe make that a little bit different, then you're going to see that it fails. As I make the color lighter, it fails with the normal text. For WCAG level 2A, it actually passes, but it would fail for 3A. And at our institution, we utilize 2A. So that would pass at that large text size, and then it would pass for the graphical objects. Does anybody have any questions about that? It's pretty simple. You add the foreground color, which would basically be your text, and then the background color, which would be like the background of the web page or the background of your document or whatever you're utilizing. And I know we still have a little bit to get through, and it looks like we've got 15 minutes. Since we're asking questions all along the way, I'm just going to go through and try to get through some of this. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear the audio in this video. I'm going to try to play it and see what happens. And if you can't hear it, somebody let me know, and then Christy can tell me, stop, this is not going to work. So this is about color contrast. I'm not even going to put it in full screen, y'all, because when I do, it's too much to, if y'all can see it, let me know if you need additional help. But then it just makes things more difficult to go back and forth in the transition.
We can't hear it, Cynthia. It's real muted and kind of weird.
Okay, so what you can do then is when you have the presentation, that's been provided, I think it was provided earlier today, just click on these. There are 3 videos. One is about color contrast, one is about headings, and one is about list formats. And it kind of walks you through why those things are important. And I will say in the color contrast, it says black and white is recommended, but it's not really black and white. We don't really recommend black and white. Black and white or dark gray and white is a safe bet. When we say recommended, it makes us think that, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do everything in black and white. That's not the case. So just ignore that little bit of information that's in there. We recommend for good readability, a dark gray and white is a safe bet. It's not recommended. You can do anything that passes the color contrast analyzer test, and that meets the brand guidelines of Texas A&M University.
We do have a couple questions, Cynthia. So one is there a way to color contrast if the background is multicolored, like the image at the top of the checker page?
Yeah, so that's one of the things we were gonna, I may have gone through this in this presentation, or maybe going through it in a subsequent slide, I can't remember, but that's a good point, is that you don't want to utilize, if you can help it, text on top of a gradient background or text on top of a picture, unless you really can see the difference, unless it's very obvious that you can see the difference, or text on top of a pattern background. Because when you do that, it really makes things a lot less clear. and it really can be distracting. I know we have some websites that do that, but it's a best practice if you can make that, more clear. That's better, actually. That's not to say you can't do it. You just have to be really certain that if you have a really dark picture, yes, you can put white text on the top of it, but can most people still read it? That's a question that you would have to probably get users to let you know.
And then the other one is, if you use something like Site Improve, would that take care of things so that you don't have to do an individual color contrast check?
Site Improve does check some of it. I would say check the color contrast analyzer anyway, because it's even much more so accurate. And some things like keyboard access require manual checks. So for keyboard access, there's no automated tool that can ensure that happens. So contact an accessibility subject matter expert or your IT personnel, and they can perhaps get you to the right place. One of the things I did want to show is inaccessible content versus accessible content. And there are certain things, and we haven't gone through all of them, so I'm just going to explain why things are inaccessible. When developing web pages within a content management system, a lot of times it will ask you for the title and like the metadata when you're filling out information about the web page. So oftentimes people, they just assume they need a title, so they add another one, and it ends up being a double heading because this title comes from the metadata, and this title comes from the information that that someone is providing in the editor, in the web page editor. So I've seen that happen before to where it's kind of a double heading. Here, this image size is not ideal. This image was a much smaller image that somebody enlarged, and so it ends up being fuzzy. So you don't want to have really big file sizes because it prevents the page from loading properly. And in this instance, you don't want to have real small images because they end up blurry, once you enlarge them to the size on the page. Then this information needs padding right here. And that's just kind of like a setting that a lot of people can put in their content management systems. Someone has assigned a heading to this whole sentence, which headings are usually saved for just chunks of information. So this would be a heading level 1. Perhaps this is a heading level 2. And somebody just decided to put a heading level 3 here because they like the way it looked. Well, that's not why we do that. We really need to let the user know what's in that content block by the particular heading that is ahead of it, right? So that's one of the things wrong with this page. Here we're using color alone to convey meaning. A better way of doing this, I'll show you in a moment, but this is color alone to convey meaning. And then here is a list, right? Two things that are related, but someone's just taken a dash and a dash here and created their own list. Here's a click here for more information. And then under what you need to know, typically 1, 2, 3 is reserved for importance or steps in a process, right? So those are some of the things that are wrong with this page. Looking at a better page, you would see here that there's only one heading, the image size is proper, the padding is good, so it's easy to read. This has the next step in the heading. If this is a heading 1, this is a heading 2, this is also a heading 2, and that's also a heading 2. That's all. I know you can in web editors indicate what level of heading you want. And typically those are nested. So if I had more information underneath this, I would use heading 3, and then go back to heading 2, almost like an outline, right? We want to stay sequential and not skip headings. We wouldn't want to do a heading 2 and then go to a heading 4. But the headings, again, tell the user the information of where they're, the types of information that's going to be in this part of the page. Color alone to convey meaning. Here we've bolded it. We've added color, importance. So instead of making the whole line, we just made that one word and said, hey, this is important. And then created the bulleted list, like you should within the web editor or within the document editor, and then created the list here bulleted instead of sequential. Does anybody have any questions? I know we're like about 9 minutes out, so I want to make sure I get through, but want to make sure I answer your questions.
I was just kind of surprised. For me, like I have trouble with the maroon box on the right just because of my own visual issues. So I was, I guess, surprised that that one's on the good side.
It's good because the contrast ratio is acceptable. And we're married a little bit at Texas A&M to our brand guidelines, right? So we potentially could have used maybe a dark gray that would have been easier on the eyes. And that's a good point. And perhaps we'll look at doing that. So, so those are different considerations that everyone needs to make or take for their own websites, you know, and it's just, again, user preference. And you are correct that reverse text like this, like white text on any kind of background, may be more difficult for folks to read. So we all need to look at those considerations for sure. And thank you for that input. That's very helpful.
Well, I don't know if it helps. Like my particular situation, I have trouble with cataracts. So I exist in a fuzzy world. And so, and I didn't notice that before I started having these issues, that is just very fuzzy, the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, even perhaps if we were able to like even add more spacing between it too, that could be more helpful potentially.
Yeah, and Cynthia, Shireen pointed out, and I went to the website also, it's fuzzy on here, but it's better on the website. So
oh, okay.
It may not help it as much, Tiana, but it's the presentation or coming through the Zoom, I think, versus if you look at it on the website, I think it might be a little bit better.
I would be interested to know if it does look better on the website, Tiana. So if you're able to let us know by contacting us, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that comment. So I'm going to slide this back over so we can get through the rest, hopefully. So went through all this, all these links you're able to look at, you know, after this webinar. So designing documents, a lot of these principles are, we still adhere to a lot of the principles we were just talking about. There's an accessibility checker in Microsoft applications, and it's super handy. It will tell you a lot of what's wrong, especially if you have alt text for pictures, which we really didn't get into a lot of that. But we need to understand too that an untagged PDF is just, it's not going to provide someone who uses a screen reader any information whatsoever, like none. They'll open the file and they may see the file title, and that's it. That's the only thing they'll understand or see. So you may have a 20-page or 200-page document, and all the information they would get is the page title. So again, reach out to us, reach out to, you know, your IT professionals or disability resources or anybody that you potentially think could help. Consider using, there's some resources by the National Centers for Disabilities, and I forget what the AE stands for, including document cheat sheets. And so these standards apply for all required course materials as well as additional resources. So just because you say, oh, hey, by the way, here's some additional resources that you can utilize as a student, those still need to be accessible, because otherwise it's giving a particular student an advantage over another that may not have access to that because they are not able to use it with their assistive technology. And when you provide that information, it's best to provide it at the very same time. So if you have an accessible version and a version for a different version, you must provide those at the same time for equitable use. All right, so I am going to slide that over again real quick, and show you those couple of things. So we have the cheat sheets. You can look here. Here's Word, PDF conversion, PowerPoints, Excel, Acrobat versions. Some of these are a little bit old, so the steps may be a little bit different. You can also search for functionality in, in Google and try to find some of those from industry experts. But if we click on Word here, it'll give you different things that are important. The heading styles within documents. I'd be interested to know, and I know we're down to 4 minutes, but I'd be interested to know how many people knew that this ribbon up here existed. So I'm going to ask that question and see if Christy can keep an eye on that. Did you know this ribbon existed to assign heading levels within a Word document? Did you know that you can add alternative text for a picture in a document so that people will understand what the images mean if they're using a screen reader? Did you know there's a columns? I'm not going to keep saying, did you know? I want to know, first of all, about the heading styles. So that's the question we're asking. Did you know about heading styles? But then I'm going to say there's columns that you can utilize here. List, the bulleted list, the numbered list. We always want to use the ones in the ribbon at the top in Word. And then creating hyperlinks. We want to really display meaningful text here again, not click here or read more, and then assign it to whatever website you're going to. Tables are important, and then there's an accessibility checker that you can get to. And I never knew it was in this tab until today. I went the long way around finding it. But in the review tab, if you review, where it allows you to access the thesaurus, I think, and spellings when you review, the accessibility checker is in the review tab also. And so you can click accessibility check for issues, and it'll show you all the accessibility issues. So, Chris,
yeah, most of the people that are responding, actually, I think everybody that's responding says yes, they did know. So you may be a little bit preaching to the choir.
Yay!
The people that are here are people that are interested in already doing the work.
Very, very good news.
I'm sure there's some people who have not answered that maybe did not know, or maybe were like me and have been a little scared to try using it. And I've been really trying hard to use headings and use the formatting and all of that in the things that I do.
Well, I can tell you, before I started working with accessibility and in this field, I knew nothing about those heading levels, and I knew nothing about any of this type of formatting, honestly. And so I did things the old school, let's type it out kind of way, right? But you'll find that using the headings is much easier anyway. Okay, we got 1 minute, and I think we just went over the last thing. I skipped over the accessibility checker, but you can get to it from the review tab, and it shows check accessibility. And then it'll show you different infractions, font color, or it'll tell you no accessibility issues found. So those are all good things to know, right? And let me just quickly go through here. Plan for accessibility from the beginning as a wrap up. Utilize standards and best practices and any information you can find, and always be evolving, right, and trying to improve by engaging in conversations and collaboration. Remember about multiple modes of access and how people access things differently than we maybe do. Seek input and incorporate feedback, just like Tiana gave me some feedback. Now we want to analyze that, take a look at it, and then be an accessibility innovator. And what does that mean? Be respectful, be understanding, utilize best practices, provide referrals to accessibility programs or disability resources programs, and actively seek assistance in accessibility training. Time, right on the money. I'm happy to stay for questions, but I know everybody, I want to be aware of everyone's time as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your time. If you guys have questions, please don't be hesitant to reach out to Cynthia or Christy or I. We will be sending an email immediately following this webinar with some of the links that were shared in the chat function as well as an evaluation survey, which helps all of us to do a better job to serve the university. So if you guys would take a minute to share some feedback for us. And then Cynthia will be CC'd on that email if you're still needing her contact information. And then we did share our Accessibility in Aggie Land link so that y'all would be able to click that, because we have one more session and we're really thrilled to have someone from outside the university to come and talk a little bit more about ableism. So thank you, Cynthia. We appreciate you so much and your time and you sharing your expertise with us. And we thank you also for attending all of the other sessions. You've done such a beautiful job, and we certainly appreciate all that you've done for us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.